On Father's Day, June 17, 2001, FDNY firefighters Jon Downing, Harry Ford, and Brian Fahey were mortally wounded in a backdraft explosion at a hardware store in Astoria, Queens. This catastrophe claimed the husband and father from 3 families and furthermore greatly impacted the firefighting industry, forever altering the lives of many closely connected to FDNY. In Part 3 of the 2001 Father's Day fire, 20 years later, we are joined by the spouses of these fallen firefighters and members of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Our goals are to honor and remember Lieutenant Downing, Firefighter Fahey, and Firefighter Ford, to hear the perspectives of and learn from the experiences of these amazing women, and to hopefully offer a model of strength and resilience to others along their journey of healing. Hello, and welcome to After the Fire podcast, a firefighter line of duty death podcast brought to you by the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation in collaboration with firefighterskills.com. I'm your host, Jon Nelson. Joining After the Fire today are wife of FDNY Lieutenant Jon Downing, Ann Downing. Ann?
I'm Ann Downing, originally from Kilkeel, County Down, Northern Ireland, now living in Port Jefferson, New York. And I am so happy to be here with you all today. This is just an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Wife of firefighter Brian Fahey, Mary Fahey.
Hello, I'm Mary Fahey. I'm from East Rockaway, New York, and it is an honor to be here today.
Thanks, Mary. Wife of FDNY firefighter Harry Ford, Denise Ford.
Good morning. I too am very happy that we're doing this and very honored that you're remembering our husbands in this way. And I currently live in Long Beach.
Thanks, Denise. And Executive Director of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, Ron Siarnicki. Ron?
It's a pleasure to be here with all of you and to have an opportunity to share in those lessons learned. The National Fallen Firefighters Foundation is here to help, support, and assist in any way we can.
Thanks, Ron. And now the Director of Fire Service Programs at the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, Chief John Tippett, will outline the National Fallen Firefighters' 16 life safety initiatives that are the focus of today's episode. John?
Well, thanks, John, and thank you all for being here. Our purposes, as John mentioned in the opening, are to offer assistance and provide help to families that are going to go through this horrific type of tragedy. The National Fallen Firefighters Foundation prides itself in its ability to provide services to families. And we're going to be focusing today on the Life Safety Initiative dealing with mental health and assistance when it comes from recovering from a tragedy. So it's a truly a distinct honor to be here with you ladies today, and we can't thank you enough for being willing to help us out in a mission to help others.
Thank you, John. As a reminder, we'll have some amazing extras material from this episode on afterthefirepodcast.com. Now, without further ado, After the Fire, Episode 9, Part 3, the 2001 Father's Day Fire of FDNY. Ladies, thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
First thing we would like to do is reflect on who your husbands were as people, as husbands to you.
Well, my husband, Harry, was a 27-year veteran in the New York City Fire Department. He started in Ladder 11, but he got laid off during the city financial crisis and came back to work in Ladder 108. And he was in Williamsburg, from 1974, 5 to 1990, when he transferred over to Rescue 4. And he was a chauffeur in the fire department. He was a very, very professional firefighter. He never wanted to rise in the ranks. He was very content to stay as a firefighter. He loved his job, and he just was just a good all-around guy. Not much of a conversationalist, but very pertained to the rules. He followed the rules with everything. He was also a delegate in both 108 as well as in Rescue 4. So, we met when he was in 108, and we met in 1983. So he just was just one of those type of guys that you could really count on. And we eventually got married, had 2 children, 2 sons, which surprised a lot of people that Harry actually did settle down. But, you know, I guess I get credit for that, being able to make this guy become responsible. And, but he really, you know, he was the type of guy that you could count on, even in the neighborhood. You know, after he passed away, I was amazed at people who sent me notes or spoke about him, how he would be out, he would love to rollerblade. So he would like stop and help people, just all the neighbors, people who didn't even know him, you know, just said he was just that type of person that was just very kind, and he may be quiet, but he was, you know, very kind-hearted.
That was beautiful.
Thanks.
Yes, beautiful.
My husband was Brian Fahey. Brian was a firefighter, like I think since the day he was born. He was a 27-year volunteer firefighter with the Hempstead Fire Department, a volunteer organization on Long Island. He taught at the Nassau County Fire Service Academy in Old Bethpage. He taught here at the Rock, especially when I had the twins and they were babies. He went to days in order to help with me with the kids at night. And then he, when he went through the fire department, he did like, you know, like the way to do it. You know, we started in an engine, he went to a ladder, he went to a squad, he went to rescue. He was going to do it the right way, and it was all about training. And one of the things I remember about him the most is he was always like, he's like, you know, the old timers are the old timers, but it's the new generation and the next generation that we have to think about. So he was very big on training the younger guys coming up, all the probies, and taking them through the through the ranks. And he was just, oh gosh, he was just an all-around great guy. Like, I think my mom liked him better than me by the time that we were done. Like, yeah. So yeah, he's just. To know him was to love him. That's all. He was just beautiful.
Wow, just beautiful. Well, John was in ladder 163, and he just loved the books. Oh boy, he loved to study. I think he definitely would have been top of the ranks. Great guy. Met him not long after I came out here, and he was at retirement for his father in the Woodside Steakhouse. So, needless to say, there I was. And well, it just was sort of love at first sight. But yeah, great guy. We had 2 kids, and he just idolized up in the mornings, make the bottles and everything before he would go to work, and all round good guy. Loved him.
You didn't have the benefit of being here yesterday, but if I didn't know better, I would think that you had talked to each other last night and talked to the guys
Oh, really?
that we interviewed yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, my husband was so much unlike them that Harry used to always take the lieutenant's test because you can get a day off
Oh,
to do it. And I said to him, one day you're going to pass it, because he never studied for it.
And it's funny because we didn't really know each other's husbands.
No.
But now we know each other's husbands. Like, if somebody asked me a question about Harry, I'd be like, Harry would never do that. There's no way Harry would have done that in a minute. Yeah. So it's weird how you get to know them even.
Well, we help
after.
raise one another's kids. Sure, they left, and I had to help you with your twins.
True.
She had to help me with Harry.
Feed the dog.
Turkey's in the oven. I'm sorry.
No, this is great. This is great.
So they have crosswords too.
Oh, that was Harry.
That was Harry.
Oh, see, I knew that was Harry, and I didn't even know that was Harry.
Yeah, they were talking about Harry's Ben Franklin glasses and having his big ham hock calves up on the table doing
Don't we know it?
crosswords.
My husband actually had these enormous calves. It was just, you know, he wasn't overweight, but he just had these very, very, I guess from running and riding his bike and stuff like that. And it was very unique. People always knew. And he never wore his long pants on the job. You know, whether or not it could be 20 below zero, he has his shorts on under the bunker gear. He never, ever wore. I think I still have them, probably with the tag on them in my closet somewhere. So, but it was, he loved his crossword puzzles. And what was nice is when we went to visit Rescue 4, after, I don't mean to take up time, but after we visited Rescue 4, Mr. Ford came with us. And it was probably maybe, I think might have been 2 weeks or so after the fire, or maybe a week. And they still had, at the end of the table, Harry's seat with his coffee mug and the crossword puzzle he'd been working on before they left. And nobody sat in that, you know. And they gave Mr. Ford the honor. They pulled the chair out and they said, you know, here, why don't you sit there? And I could see like the emotion just in him. And, you know, so it really meant a lot. And it meant a lot to all of us, you know, and I guess sometimes that's what you think about. You may think about the fire department, you know, like they're always there for you, but it's always those little things that they do unconsciously that just impact your mean so much. So, yeah, the crosswords.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Ladies, I know this won't be easy, but we were wondering what you recalled from that day. You know, if you want to start from the beginning of the day or the event itself, however you best remember it and recall it, if you wouldn't mind.
Harry had another job, so he worked in the movies. So he went on Saturday morning, and that was the last time I saw him. And then from that Saturday, he went to Rescue 4. So he was supposed to, you know, work 24 and then come home that night. And we were going to make dinner or maybe go out. So, you know, I had a daughter from my previous marriage. She was away at college. So the boys and I were home. And so we were just, you know, doing things. And it was rather odd because Harry never really called from the firehouse unless it was like a specific reason, like, you know, don't forget you have to pick up something. But he never called to chat, you know, and it was odd because probably maybe 10:30, 11, I forget what time it was, he called and we were talking and he said to me, oh, let me say hello to the boys, which was very strange indeed. And so they got on and they were able to speak to their father. And, you know, they wished him happy Father's Day and they said, we'll see you later. So then afterwards, you know, I said to them, you know, maybe you should make cards for Daddy. So they sat down and they were making Father's Day cards for their father. So then it wasn't until maybe 2, whatever in the afternoon, I ended up getting a phone call from one of the chiefs, Ed Moriarty, I think it was. And he told me that Harry was hurt and that he'll come pick me up to take me to the hospital. So I said, oh, all right. He knew where I lived. So I quick called my sister to come over and take care of the boys. And then I called up my Uncle George, who was a retired firefighter, and I asked him to come over to take a ride with me. My husband never told me that when you get a phone call from the chief that it's really bad news. So I just thought he was all right in the hospital. So we drove in, and so I was sitting in the back just thinking how, you know, everything will be fine, you know, I'll take a look at him, whatever. And when we got to the hospital, Elmhurst, I remember Lynn Tierney saying that she knew. At that point, I had no clue. And so I remember going in with them into the hospital, and they walking me down the hallway, and I could see firemen or somebody standing around, and they brought me into this waiting room. And I remember, like, I literally walked into the corner, and I turned around, and I said, well, where is he? And, you know, that's when they told me that he had died. And so I had, before I left for the hospital, I called up the Fords, his father and his brother. So they were at the hospital. So Jon was there already. And we went in to see Harry. And so to me, I just could not comprehend what was going on at that point. And I just couldn't, you know, I was just in such shock that I was sitting there with my sister-in-law and she was crying and I'm like sitting there, like I just could not get my emotions. I just was gone. And I remember Giuliani came over and he thought Mary, because she was crying so much, was the wife. And I said, no, it was me. So we were there for a while. And I remember like looking across the room, and it was a Downing family. I didn't know who they were. So then we were able to go home. I remember Father Jon Nelson came and spoke with me and told me that they were still waiting to find another firefighter, and I was praying that he would survive. And so when we went home, the realization was when I got home that I'm going to have to tell my sons that their father passed away. So when we pulled up, everybody was outside. And so they knew, I had called my aunt. So then I said to everybody, just wait out here. And then I had to bring my boys in, and we sat there together. And I had to let them know that their father wasn't going to come home anymore. And so that was probably the hardest thing I ever did in my whole entire life, because, they loved their father and they adored him, and he was so good to them, and they did so many things together. So, and, it wasn't even then, we didn't have full comprehension of what it was going to be to raise your children without their father. So that's what I remember that day.
June 17th was a very strange day because it started out pouring rain, and it was like one of those June days where it was like almost like a winter day. And Brian had worked the night before, and like Denise said, like usually if they worked the night before, you'd get the 9 o'clock call in the morning and it'd be like, all right, like, everything okay? Yeah, I'll be home. And he's like, oh, I'll be home later. I'm like, I don't even know what to make because it's like so nasty out. And he then at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he called me back, and I'm like, that's odd. Oh, I just want to say I love you, and like, what a lovely day. And it was like, oh, okay. It was weird. It wasn't like we all got the call. So it was like weird that we all got this call, which was unusual for many firemen, I'm sure. So being the trainer that my husband was, he had always taught me that if a firefighter knocks on the door, I'm hurt, and if a chief knocks on the door, I'm dead, right? I don't know why he felt the need to do that, but he wanted me prepared.
But at least you were prepared.
I was prepared. So, well, I think so. But I remember pulling back the curtain in that day and going, this is like the weirdest day. And I just knew that it was a weird, like, I don't know why I knew it was a weird day, but I remember pulling back my kitchen curtain and saying, this is a very strange day. And that was probably around 2:30, 3 o'clock. So then I had 2 3-year-olds and an 8-year-old, and we were waiting for Daddy to come home. And, we had his presents all wrapped and stuff. And I was doing laundry, and I was going down my basement stairs, and I had like a little window that you could see the driveway. So there was a knock on my door, and I said, I thought it was my neighbor coming for tools, my neighbor Tom. So I pulled back the curtain, and I said, and I see a stranger. So I'm like, I go, uh-oh. And I'm thinking, is my door locked? So he goes, hi, I'm Chief. And the minute he said the word Chief, I just knew because of training that I had received. So I was like, I was like, get out. Like, I was like, get away from, like, get out of my driveway. Go away. And he's like, no, just let me, like, could you let me in? And I'm like, no. So then I said, I went upstairs. I said, what happened? He goes, I don't know yet. I was just dispatched here. But for that poor man, it was his first day on the job as chief. So he was only supposed to sit outside, but being a new chief, he didn't realize that. So he had come to my door too prematurely because Brian had been trapped. So I said, what am I, like, what happened? And I go, is he dead? No, I don't know anything. So I call my brother who lives down the block. I call my niece, Melissa, and I was like, you and your dad need to get here. So they both came running down. She took my kids with her, and me and my brother sat there with this poor chief. It was hours, because we didn't start, I don't think we headed to the hospital till hours and hours later. It was just, it was weird because but you don't know, and you want to believe, but you don't want to believe. And then when we started driving to the hospital, we believe in the saints and with Catholics. So like all my father's relatives that had passed away were like sitting in the car with me, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, my brother's in the front seat, and I'm like tapping him. I'm like, Aunt Dottie's here. And he's like, oh. So then when we pulled into the hospital, I remember like the smell hitting me of all like the fire, like you have that fire smell, and my brother turning around and like we get out of the car and he goes, "Sis, it ain't good. It ain't good. Sis, this ain't good." So we just both had this, we just knew, and we walked in, and then that's when Lynn and everybody came over and told us, and it was just. I don't know. It's just a different one. I don't know. It's just it alters your whole entire you're Mary Fahey, Brian's wife, on 1 second, and then you're Mary Fahey, Brian's widow in the next second, and you already at that moment start to prepare yourself for being Brian Fahey's widow. I can't explain it, but like your instincts start to kick in, and then just by, and I just by the grace of God that you got through it all. I remember driving there thinking like, well, if the Blessed Mother could do what she did, then I can handle whatever's going to come at me. And I just started preparing. So that's how that was June 17th, 2001. Oh, and then going home was horrific because now you have to tell 2 3-year-olds that are never going to understand, and an 8-year-old that when I told him, because he was with my niece who is so kind, she's such a good person, he didn't know, and I had to tell him, and I remember telling this 8-year-old, and the most the most blood-curdling, horrific scream came out of my child, and I'm like, how am I ever going to repair that? How am I ever going to compensate for that? But you start at that moment to start thinking of how you're going to do that. So that was it.
Oh, I know, Mary. Well, mine didn't look right from the start because John always went to work in the car. But the night before, the Saturday evening, realised that another one of the guys was going in for 24. So anyway, we went to the soccer game, Joanne, 7, and come back. He did a few things, and anyway, went off to work for 24 in the other guy's car. So next morning, it was pouring. Flooded basement. Call John, what am I going to do? Going to try to put some buckets, try to wedge up as much as I could and just leave the buckets there and I'll empty them whenever I come home. Then I thought the pool was going to overflow and I probably called back and they were out in a run. Okay, I'll call back again. Kept calling, still out in a run. Thought, wow, must be some job today, So time went on and I knew that he wanted things from Costco for the pool and the kids wanted to get Father's Day gifts. So we went to Costco and it was a big Mets day and we didn't go because we were going to Ireland the following Friday. So all the family were leaving to go to this Mets game. And back to the shopping again, got what we did. And then the kids wanted to go see Shrek. And we come back, stopped in Bob's stores, come up. They wanted Wendy's, got Wendy's, had a leg of lamb, says, oh, I'll leave it back at the house before I go to take them to the movies. So anyway, I come back down the road and I start to see some of the cars. The wife of the guy that he went to work with was the one. I see the sister-in-law's van still there, thinking, wow, what is going on? And there seemed to be a lot of cars and whatever else. So I come on down. I could feel my heart starting to pump that there's something not right. I keep on driving and the next thing I get near my house and they're all out on the grass. And as I pulled up, so I said, just give us the kids. We have to leave. There's a helicopter coming down to pick you up, to take you to Queen's, because there's been an accident. So the kids were whipped out, went down the road, were put into a helicopter. And I remember thinking, he's badly burned. Is he badly burned? And that's what I thought it was. So we come down in Queens anyway and raced to the Elmhurst Hospital. And I remember just people just grabbing my hand and we walked in and just everybody was there. It was like, he's gone. Could not believe it. Couldn't sink in. It was just horrendous. So, oh man. Just everything else was like a nightmare. Coming back and just my sister-in-law calling Ireland to tell them all. And Jon was passed away. It was just the kids. Michael was only 2, Joanne was 7. Oh. Here we are. I don't know. Must be. And then Michael then. That's another story. 1 year after that, the next thing, he has cancer. And it just was just like never ended. So one 2001, another one 2003 passed away. It was just like, oh. I don't know. I'm still here anyway. I'm still here.
Thankfully.
It's them angels up above that has got Joanne and me 1 foot in front of the other.
Thank you all for sharing that. It's deeply emotional. What concerns did you ladies immediately have upon hearing the news? How did you recover? But what were those immediate concerns that you had?
I'm going to say for all of us, I'm going to say our children. I would imagine, I know that, I'm sure. But your children, because it's how are they going to be affected by this? Who are they going to be? Like they're, especially, we had boys, Joanne, I'm not saying that Joanne is less or more, but, when you have boys, it's like they don't have a father. And I mean, I shouldn't really say, that sounds weird, but I'm not saying that. Yeah. But for your children. Yeah. I remember that the first time I was by myself, because like Ann said, there's a million people around you, a million, your family's coming in, there's sandwiches being dropped off, there's people, calls, your phone is ringing. And so the first time, and I remember the first time I put my head on my pillow when I was by myself, I had to have, I said, you have to get your head out of your ass. Like your kids could be drug addicts. Your kids could be, messed up in any way, anybody's kids. It's, there but for the grace of God go any of us. But they're not going to be drug addicts because their father died. They're going to be drug addicts because in spite of everything that you've done to not, to give them the support that they need. So I think at that moment, I think you start strengthening yourself for them, for the sake of them.
You're right. I think it is for the children. And I think even for me, my youngest, Gerard, was 10 when his father passed away. He was graduating the Tuesday, June 19th. So, of course, I called the schools and the boys didn't really have to go back to school. They understood. But Gerard said to me, I want to go to my graduation. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, they said, well, he could come in later, doesn't have, but he wanted to do everything like as if nothing happened, so I said to my daughter and my nieces, they were all going. And I said, be there for him because it was going to be the first day of the weekend, but he wanted me there. So it was that realization at that point. And then he was going into Kellenberg in September and it was a different school from all of his friends. And I told him, I gave him an option not to. You didn't have to go. You could stay with your friends, but he wanted to. And then I remember when I had to tie ties for his school and he didn't know how to do it. And I had to call my brother-in-law up. But I think you start realizing, early on that you have to be more than just a mother to your children. You have to make sure that you're there. You had to get up every day out of your bed. There, some days you could go back into bed after they leave. But, for me, I needed to show, that I was going to be strong for them and that I was going to continue to be present in their lives. Because I think that that's the worst thing is like all of a sudden the whole world is like just went topsy-turvy and they don't have that father that they were going to count on, so then you have to be that person. And I was thankful that Eleanor McLaughlin, Pete's mom, had called me and she said to me, "You're going to get a lot of advice, but she said, I want you to go see this woman for grief counseling." So, and I think that helped to be able to, because you realize that it was just an enormous future, an uncertain future, and you needed to bring yourself, back to the reality of what it is. So, but it is always your children.
That was so important, the grief counseling, I would say, because we all ended up in a group, in the same group. And it makes you think it's like almost like a barometer, like, okay, we're all doing the same, even we're leading different lives, but we're all emotionally at the same point. Like you say, okay, I'm not as crazy as I think I am, because it's just so overwhelming. And I don't want to make it sound like I thought that it was less for Joanne. I didn't say that it's a son thing. It's just that having boys, you think of father. So.
Joanne was
she was broken. Oh my goodness. She would write him letters to heaven, and it just was. And every time that all the school stuff that they would have for dance for your daddy, or so she just can't even be in the same room.
I think it was hard for her too, because we all had it was like Michael, my boys, Denise's boys. So she was the only girl of the the daughter of the Father's Day fires. So I think it was hard for her. And that too, and she's so special and emotional.
Oh, I know. But through it all, something, I think she took to books. She just, where she could have went down, but she went. She just kept studying and studying and studying. Yeah. That's how she got where she is now. Yeah.
Very
Absolutely.
Successful. Yeah.
That's what you said about Jon in the beginning, and now that's his daughter.
I know. Yeah. It's crazy.
And like Denise said too, it's not the big things. Like, you could probably drive them cross country if they needed to go, but it's like tying a tie. It's like, that could be more monumental than playing baseball out on the field with them. Yeah. It's just little things that get you.
But, we were thankful, for the support that we did, get with the firefighters and everybody, because, they took us to a game. We went to Yankees, right? I'm turning.
Yes.
I say it right. But, and it was even nice. They would have the Christmas party, so we went to that. And it was emotional, but the children got to see other children who were in the same boat as they are, So I think that was, very key. For me, Mary was saying, it's funny that, out of all of this, we didn't know one another, prior to June 17th. And Mary and I met on the steps of St. Sebastian's.
But it was weird because I didn't know I didn't know her. So I was like, is now we had one more funeral, and I'm like, is she going to the funeral? Because I think ours was the same day.
Right, we were the same day. It was in the morning. You were the afternoon, and was the next day.
Probably because we had all the Ireland coming in.
And I just had this thing like, I'm going.
Yeah, so we were going. So we met, and then we got eventually to meet Anne, but we got to see her at her husband's funeral.
We drove out to meet her and Granny.
Right, we met out to meet you and Granny. That's right out to your house. Yeah. So, but it is through grief counseling, it helped. And we got to be friends, with some of the 9/11 widows, as a result of that. So after a while, we would do every other week would be in group. And, a lot of us were fire department widows, and unfortunately, there were a few that weren't. So, and I think sometimes they were a little tired of us, but a little. One actually, asked to be removed. She didn't want to do group with us anymore. So she went on her own way, whatever. So, but
we were the mean girls of group.
we weren't mean. No, but I guess we just had
I wasn't with them all the time.
No, but we
like,
grabbed,
"Don't let me in."
but we actually sucked your right in, Ann, and we wouldn't let go. But we
I had
made
a
sure
long
she
haul.
showed up. Yeah, we got her in though. But but I think that helped. Like being able to speak with one another, and like Mary said, our lives were different, but they were same in so many other ways. So, and I think that was the strength of helping to get us to this day, with our kids, because.
And also, a lot of the widows that had gone before us for the fire department had given us calls.
Yeah.
And that was real, like you might not have gotten anything from one of them, but you got a little bit of something from each. And like to this day, I remember one of the widows called and I said, I'm never going to speak to him again. I'm never going to speak to him again. And she said, oh, you're going to speak to him again. He's just going to speak to you in a different language. You need to learn the language. Yeah. And I was like, and that I don't know why, but that one sentence got me through so much because, on your deepest, darkest day, like a cardinal would fly by. I'm like, oh, that's fine. Or, you found the pennies. And even though that's not my pennies weren't my thing, I knew that was Denise's thing. So I'm like, Harry's with me. I'm like, hello, Harry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harry. Michael. You know what I mean? Or Michael, or you drive by and it'd be like a St. Michael's, band, and you'd be like, Michael's. So you learned, and I said, I've learned the language, and they really are with us.
Yeah, they are.
Especially now in hindsight, and you look at your kids, and they're all successful, it's like, we didn't do that as widows on our own. We did that with their intercession from, sending the right person to be there, sending, so-and-so to, offer them the internship. You never know where, and the help comes in the weirdest, wackiest places and the weirdest, right? The weirdest shapes and forms. Like you're like, wait, so-and-so, I got help from that. Like that didn't make sense. But once it was all spelled out, it made complete sense.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. It was interesting too, because even with, I think Joanne did this because Gerard did the Big Brother.
Oh
yeah. So that was something that was very key.
Not
when you look
very
at
much.
your children's. But Gerard embraced it. Harry is different. My older boy is different. They have two different personalities, but Gerard is very quiet. So he was a concern for me, and so they came up with this Big Brother. And I was surprised. He took to it, and actually it was a New York City firefighter, Jim Beltrani, I think I'm saying this right. God bless him. He would, take Gerard out. They'd, like if they went to a baseball game or whatever, and it was somebody that Gerard could call up, somebody that he could look up to. And it was actually very helpful. I have to say that I think it was something that mattered in my son's life, So you have to look at their personalities to understand. And, so there were a lot of key elements that have been offered to us. And I'm always fortunate that we were able to get this, for our children. So
I think, like you said too, like it works for some things, work for some. So some, and for anybody that has to go through it now, like back then, I think you were so tense and you were holding all the balls in the air. But like I would say, relax, because the right thing is going to fall into the place as long as you trust. Like it worked for Gerard, it didn't work for Harry. It wouldn't work for Brendan. It might work for Joe. Like everybody gets what they need. I think a little bit of everything.
Well, like through John, I have to say, like when Michael, my little boy, got sick and was in the hospital, like all the firemen, oh my God, between the blood and the platelets, it just was unbelievable. Michael never had to be without any of that stuff. They were just there. And they even put up one of the ladders to put a big sign up on the window at the hospital, the firemen. Yeah, it was like, oh. Yeah, so it's... And then, these girls, they were always good to me.
What was it?
We went to visit her in the hospital, and we only We only ordered one sandwich, so me and Denise ate half the sandwich.
Great friends,
And
aren't
they
they?
brought her how they having the sandwich and said, well, we brought you a
And poor
sandwich.
Ann was stuck in the hospital.
I was stuck in the
Couldn't get any
hospital
food.
for days. Yeah.
Well, Ann.
Remember that?
I'll not get fat with these two.
We're only watching out for
Yeah,
you.
really.
You know, Ann, really. You know, we do love you, and that's why we did that.
Oh my God, I was a complete skeleton.
You were. You were.
Oh,
And it
God.
was a tough time for Ann. It really, you know, when we never realized till we actually the day we went into it, and I remember we were coming home on the train, and we were like just the day of seeing this, being there just for that afternoon and whatever, and to think that Ann was there all the time, and you know, and a credit to Ann keeping it together as
Yes,
well, and
absolutely.
That
The
was
impact
when
that
I
it had
did
on-
need John.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah.
and the
Yes.
impact on Joanne. I mean, it was just
Yeah,
such a tough
couldn't-
time.
poor
Very
Joanne was left
yeah.
at home.
yeah.
Tough. But there were the times when I needed to have John.
But you found out how strong you were
Yeah.
because of that.
It was tough. It still is, but yeah.
Your resilience is not only clearly evident, but a model. And it does show the fire hero families that are going to experience this, that they can make it. What advice would you give to fire departments that are going to have to deal with this? Because it sounds like there's this, and we know from our experience, there's always this tumult and my God, that poor chief. I mean, poor you,
I know,
but
the
my
poor
God,
chief,
that
I
poor
know.
chief. And
Chief
credit to your
McCarthy.
empathy to think more of him than yourself at that moment, which I think is a credit to your humanity. But
I ran into him like a year later, and like we just looked at each other. We like no words were even needed. We just like hugged, and like there was like just hugged, and he was like, "I'm so sorry," and I'm like, "No, I'm so sorry." Like like no, like how traumatic for a person being chief the first day, and already realizing like, ruh-roh, I'm supposed to be sitting in the car.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to like really make a blueprint for what they need to do because, as you could tell, all three of us had different experiences that day. So I think that the best thing is to be able to, just take it, whatever happens that day. And I think that the best way to approach the family, I mean, because you don't know how a wife or a husband or children will take the news when you bring it to them. So, I think that as long as they understand that just to have compassion, that's, that would basically be because you can't really make any mistakes, doing this because, like, how do you say to a family, it's like, I drove in a car, not realizing, we were calmly driving in, Mary had the chief who was new on the job, and Ann, of course, had to take a helicopter. So it was like all these different ways that we found out about our husbands. And, and I'm sure that it happens with other New York City firefighter families as well. How do they explain that to a wife? and then she's going to tell her children. So I think that in my experience, I believe that they're doing the right way.
I
guess.
think the most important part to tell, you sort of feel like knowing that you're part of the fire department family and that those parts are not going to change is the most important. The firemen were there in the hospital. They were in my driveway, ordering food, sweeping, getting relatives driven back and forth. Yeah. You're so part of it because your husbands are, they love their jobs. They're part of a family. Like, I think it works. The chaos you need, and the fact that you're you're a family is the most important thing. You are not not only are they not forgotten, but you're not forgotten. Wouldn't you say that?
And I think also even that Sunday, the firemen probably, the ones that were to come to tell me, they sat there for hours before that I ever come back from the stores. Exactly. They, maybe if it wasn't that, they would come looking for you, but they waited until, man, they probably could have had some weight if I hadn't come back with that leg of lamb.
And they're still waiting for that leg lamb.
God, I could
They're
have been
still
in the
waiting for
movies.
it, and when are you going to make it for them? For God's sakes, it's a small world because when I was in the waiting room, they had us, like the windows covered. So my brother comes in. My brother was a cop at that time. So he comes in and I see him talking to this group of people and everything like that. And I'm like, why is he talking to people? Like, I'm the one who lost my husband. So he comes over and he's telling me that that's the Downing family. So the Downings, when they saw him, Joe, was like, I can't believe Tommy Dowd showed up because we lost my brother John, because John and Tommy went to school together. They were in St. Francis. So they were amazed that Tommy showed up to offer his condolences. And he's like, no, I'm here for my sister because my brother-in-law died. And that's how we realized.
They were in Sunnyside or something, and I have a brother-in-law that's in the fire department as well, but they knew, and then they went straight to the hospital, but they couldn't contact me because I was like...
Going to see Shrek.
No, I was getting the stuff for John for the pool. I'm getting Father's Day gift.
You are such a good wife.
Right.
She was emptying the pool with the
Yeah,
buckets.
but I had a flooded house too.
So did I. I had a flooded basement too. Yeah.
You want as many distractions as you possibly can, because those quiet moments, you're not ready for them.
No.
You're just not ready for them.
No, and that's
why shock is a really good thing, because you cannot handle them. Absolutely.
It is the quiet times when you're by yourself. But
Sometimes I feel I never got grieving, John, until my little boy got sick.
Right.
Because, it wasn't very long after that till he started to have different symptoms, So it was like...
Well, was that the plaque dedication that Michael
Yeah.
was first showed the
Yeah.
first signs? Because we were all together.
Well, I was waiting. Was that the
No, you
1
were
year
going.
anniversary?
yes, the
You
year
were going.
anniversary that Monday.
Yeah, I was
yes.
waiting for
Yeah.
answers from
Yeah, remember
some
he
of
was
the doctors
screaming.
then.
He was screaming.
Yeah,
you know.
screaming. Yeah.
It was in Stony Brook. But that's. I guess you have to realize that you have to find a way to live and to get on. We were fortunate that we became friends. That we all. We're still friends to this year.
We're sisters. We're not
We
friends.
actually
We're
spent our first New Year's Eve alone together in Woodlock Pines, and Mary convinced me to go, and we brought the kids, and it was freezing cold. Of course, she got sick and couldn't go out with the boys, so she's like in her bathrobe in the house,
remember that.
yeah, drinking her tea, and I'm out in like sub-zero temperature with all these kids, all these boys, and everything like that. I'm thinking, wow, she really is good at this, And then it was
You can put that in the blueprint.
Yes,
Fake illness.
Yes, fake illness. Get somebody who's perceived weaker than you are and take advantage of her. And, but it was, and then of course we go to New Year's Eve with the kids and everybody else.
that was horrible.
And we look at one another and we're like, what are we
Like
doing
they're all
here?
screaming Happy New Year, and we're sitting at a table
Crying,
sobbing.
our eyes out. I said, all right, maybe that wasn't the best thing
That
to
wasn't
do
a good idea.
so soon after Father's Day. But you know what? Find humor.
Yeah.
We had, of course, 9/11. For us, we lost seven guys, seven more in on 9/11, and so we became the senior widows.
Yeah.
Okay, so so we were tasked, and like the poor guys, because they were so overwhelmed. They were so overwhelmed, with the enormity of all of a sudden now you have 7 women that you have to deal with their families and whatever. So a little bit of guidance and stuff for us because we had two months under our belt. And, but I think it helped us with our process, where we were able to see also through their eyes what was going on with their lives. And, so Mary and I spent many a day going to wakes and funerals. We still think of those Cheerios in her car, but and that was it. And we got to see one another, and and then visiting Anne and going through it with Anne, through her trials and tribulations in that sense, and the journey she was on, and then even eventually becoming friends and staying friends. with some of the women from 9/11. And the one thing we found was that to be able to embrace friendship and for people who understand what you're going through, and then to find humor in life. And we always kid around that we have widow humor, that there's some different than anyone else. And I remember one time when we were all upstate, and that was the turkey time, and we were all hanging out at this one place, and there was a guy who was a firefighter. And
No, we used to bring, once a year, we'd take all the kids skiing.
But we were in the hunt,
Yeah.
whatever it was. I remember Terry, and he, all of a sudden, like he was having such a difficult time after 9/11, after all of this, and survivor's guilt and whatever. And he, all of a sudden, he looked at us because he saw how we were all acting, and he said it helped him. It helped him recover, because if we were able to lose our husbands and still get on with our lives and still find the delight in life, and delight and humor, then it made him feel better about himself going on that and looking for something like that in his life as well. And that's what we wanted to say to them. We know that you lost. It's a big loss. To see your comrades, they're gone, and to try to have to deal with the family. But if you could see in our strength that we were able to overcome all of this, then we would want them to overcome as well. And we were happy with Joe Vasilla, who got hurt that day, and talking with him. And we were so thankful that it was only 3 firefighters that died that day, not the 4th. And he was able to get on with his life, and I think he's living in Florida now.
Yeah, he did, yeah. But Denise and I had visited him right away in the hospital when he was really, still in intensive care.
Yeah.
And that was, he felt bad that, he was there, he was still
He was
alive.
alive.
And we were like, we're so happy you're alive. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that was rough.
So even for the families, if you can, stay together. We have our moments, right, Ann?
They gang up on me a lot. But
Oh, come on. All right, really, enough of Mary, Ann.
As you can see, I'm the quiet one.
I remember selfishly thinking, thank God there were 2 other women with me. As crazy as that sounds, as selfish as that sounds, I don't know if I would have wanted to do it by myself.
I have a question on that. Speaking of going at it alone or experiencing this, have you all been involved with later line of duty deaths and helping out with any families that are trying to do that in FDNY, or is it more just kind of staying close knit with the Father's Day and the 9/11?
Well, I think we did all the 9/11 funerals. I think that there's five of us. There's us 3, and then our group is Rosellen Dowdell and Tara Stackpole. So the 5 of us are mainly together. But I don't think we probably I really haven't reached out to any other widows that have. I actually joined the fire department, the volunteers, and they asked me to be committee chairman of crisis intervention and stress management. So I'm starting to think of those programs and stuff. But I don't think I've been as kind to new widows as you. Have you?
Well, not mostly 9/11. I'm friends with Margaret Ryan. She lost her husband, Chief, and Debbie Palmer. There were a lot of the widows that I met afterwards. It was funny because one time I'm at lunch and they're all Rosalie Downey and Maureen Fanning and everybody, and they're all husbands, are all chiefs, bigwigs. And I'm thinking to myself, my husband used to call them muckety mucks, kind of thing, say, no way was he going to be an officer, So, but through that, and I know that we did have a woman who lived around the block. Peter Lund's wife, Andrea, lived around the block from me, so they asked if I'd speak with her. So, it's if somebody had asked, after the fact, that to reach out, we would. But a lot of times they were very insulated. When we had Black Sunday, we knew Michael Coley's brother, Brendan. I remember we were all praying for him, after he jumped out the window. So he's thankfully survived. So, and his mother, Margaret, was always very good. And so,
his father.
right, yeah. And then even, Donna Hickey, when you think about the different people that you knew, and through everything that they've gone through. I don't know whether or not, I know with Ladder 163, because you only had just John, right?
Yeah. Well, there was a couple others, but they weren't at that house there, but yeah. But the firemen, they've been so great, like 163, 325, for anything, like Christmas, they come out and put up Christmas decorations for me and just everything. It's just like our family, we're all family.
And that is the uniqueness of the fire service
Yeah.
family.
Oh, yeah.
From any other
Awesome.
industry that's out
Yeah.
there, that is the
You name
uniqueness
it,
of
if
that.
I only had have to tell them.
And the other piece, though, is having that person to talk to who's been in the same situation. We at the foundation get calls all the time and, talk to them, help them, but I've not been there personally. Most of our staff haven't, but those that have understand that, but that's why we use family members to help other family members. That's the criticalness of the support programs, because that's what you need through the family assistance unit, having that connectivity, having those events with the kids get together or the spouses or parents. It's critical to have that time so that when you're talking to somebody, and they know exactly where you've been. No one else does. And that's a good piece.
You always get cards every year.
Yeah, I was just
From
going to
that,
say that.
that
That's always
newsletter.
lovely.
And the
Yeah,
newsletter's
I-
great.
yeah.
Just
And
to
then you read about people from
come
all
up
over the
on your-
country. So you read their stories, and it was, it's nice, because then you see, and it gives you strength also as you move on and everything. So
And even when you hear a fire, you hear like the California fires or, something going on in another state, like even we're also like, not only are we like an FDNY family, but we're like, a national, family. It's like, you're already praying, I'm already on the phone. Denise, did you hear about, there's a fire in California, you're already praying for that part of your family also.
Ladies, we can't thank you enough for being part of this today and sharing your experiences. In closing, do you have any advice or final thoughts that you would give a family going through a line of duty death right now?
I think that you have to circle your wagons and realize that there is going to be a lot of chaos coming at you, and you're going to have to weed, like not weed out, like it's not that, like not all help is good help for you. So you have to be able to say, that's beautiful help, but I'm gonna do it this way, and then rely on the help that is working for you. So I think you have to be strong enough to say, that's lovely, but that doesn't work for me. I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it this way. And it's hard because people are like, no, I've got, I'm going to do it. And you're like, oh, very nice. But so that's hard too.
And building on that, are there any specific things that you haven't already mentioned that you could recommend or that have worked for you?
Well, like you have little children and everybody's like, I'll take the baby. I'll do this. I'll do that. Let me have the boys. Let me have this. Let me do that. And now it's so helpful that they're doing that for you. But now as a mother, you're like, where are my kids? They're taking them and doing things that you would be like, not bad things, but like exposing, like, your father died in a fire. He's a hero. And that's great that they hear that, but they're 8 years old. So you're like, well, like we're going to tone that down a bit. So now you have to circle your wagons and say, well, I don't want him going into that situation. I don't want my son so exposed. I want to keep it where he's insulated with his grandmother, Denise, and my brother. I want to keep it more in. So it's okay to say thank you so much, but no, I'm going to keep him home today. Thank you. Or, he's not going to be put on the stage at school to carry the banner because his dad died in a fire.
Right.
Like, you have to have the strength to say, okay, that's beautiful, but maybe in a few years from now.
Yeah.
So you have to be very protective of the good, of even the good help.
I would say be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think that what happens is you try to be more than what you should be, because people expect, like Mary said, people expect all this stuff. And yes, it's time sometimes it's good to insulate yourself from everybody, because you have to figure out your life and how you're going to push forward and how you're going to go forward. And I think that, like I said, if you have children, you have to take care of them. And it's good, like if you could send them to school, you don't always have to stay awake. There were times then I was happy that the boys went to summer camp. Then I'd have that quiet time to myself, and then just to maybe I didn't want to do anything that day. And it's perfectly fine. You can't do it every day though, so, but I think that always on your own time, in your own way, look for the type of help that is going to help, that would be good for you and good for your family. Because, you get a lot of advice and it's like, okay, you could run all over and like really tire yourself out trying to figure out what is the right thing to do. Be kind to yourself, listen to your heart, and just, make sure that you follow, what you instinctively know is the best path to carry yourself forward.
And also too, when you start to figure out 3 years later, I'm going to start living, it's okay to live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's okay to live. Yeah. You're supposed to be surviving. So you're supposed to be living. Yeah. It's okay to do that. It's find yourself, but in the you'll find it in the future. But it's okay to live.
Right.
It's okay to move on.
Go out to lunch with your friends.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Yeah, I think the same here too. Just be kind to yourself. It's going to take time. Don't rush, because it's tough. It's a very tough challenge, and you need your friends to help you get through it.
And you had Granny, because we used to love coming out to see you, because you actually did do a nice lunch. You may have not fed those guys on Father's Day, but boy, you made up for it at your home.
Mary used to come out, the Cheerio, you get into the couch. She says it brought me breakfast. Yeah, the Cheerios were all on the ground as couch.
See, we both know.
The
so
other
I
half
wasn't
of the
making
sandwich.
it up. It's not.
Do you
Well, she had
notice
the
how they
Cheerios
try
on the floor
to
for you
show
when you
my
were
dirty
hungry?
laundry, but not their own? They're ganging up on me, and nobody's seeing this.
Wow. Keep on going. Keep on going. It was funny. I knew I was going to be friends with Mary because...
No, don't tell me.
I won't
It's
say
going
the
to
whole
come
thing.
out, Mary. It's going to come. Yeah.
But we were on the steps of St. Sebastian's waiting for Anne to come out. And so Mary says, I think those TV cameras are on us, so watch what you say. So I'm like, oh, okay. So she says, you want to run across how about if we just, all of a sudden, I dare you to run across the plaza. So when I looked at her and I said, you go first. So I came home and I said to my family, I said, I think I'm going to be friends with Mary because she is a little bit zany, the type. But I think that, even then, when you could find those moments, I think that where that connected, which connects you to other people, and just finding, even with a lot of the women we met, the wives, and you found, things that you had in common with them. So, all these years, you're still basically friends with them. You still keep in touch. And, like I said, Margaret Ryan and Kathy Gansey, and just Jerry Stack, right? Yeah.
I think it's amazing too how they like every fire has a name.
Yeah,
You know, like
yeah.
the Father's Day
The Father,
fire,
yeah.
the Black Sunday.
Yeah.
That's also sort of important
Yeah.
in a way because like you know the names,
Yeah.
so it's like oh
Yeah.
you know, or you might not know their names, but you'll hear the fire and you'll know that whole story. So I think that that's also important.
Ron, any parting thoughts?
Just that there's a lot of families that go through this, and the families do the best when they have help from those that have been down that journey. And the critical piece is to reach out and take what help you are comfortable with. But sometimes it's okay to say, no, I got this, and I need some space. And I think that's a critical piece relative to your own well-being, your family's well-being, your kids' well-being. And the one piece is that celebrity status that happens with the kids especially can be harmful. So you have to put those protective pieces in place.
Especially if you're from small towns, you know, like I'm from a very small town. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's related. You know, I can go to the playground and it's like, oh, that's, you know, so-and-so's cousin, but the brother-in-law of so it's, you know, you're really out, like you really felt exposed. Like there was a real feeling of exposure. So, you know, I'm sure you have a lot of towns that are even smaller than where I'm from. So it's tough. You know? Because when it is time to live again, you sort of feel like, oh my gosh, I was out there, you know, when it was, you know, I'm supposed to be the grieving widow, you know, with tears coming down my eyes, and now I'm starting to live, and you know, there's almost like a I'm not going to say guilt. Like, how would you describe it? It's not like a guilt, but it's like should I be doing this?
Uncomfortableness.
Yeah, you know, I think I remember the first time I danced, the first time I would put on a song and actually wasn't like sobbing to it.
Yeah.
You know, and it was, I had to like consciously allow myself to say, it's okay to listen to music. It's okay to dance.
Jon, any thoughts from you?
Well, I feel like I'm standing in the shadow of heroes. And can't thank you enough for your candor and your willingness to share all of what you've shared with us today. And I just know in my heart that there will be people that will benefit from this.
I hope so.
And we can't thank you enough for your willingness to put your hearts on the table for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, really.
You ladies are awesome. It's a pleasure
thanks.
meeting you.
Thank you.
So cool. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate this.
Be sure to check out all the extras at afterthefirepodcast.com and firehero.org for all things NFFF. A special shout out to the FDNY Family Services for helping us put together this episode. And also an extra special thank you to Thomas Bendick and crew at FDNY for helping us record the audio-visual material. We really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I also want to thank these ladies for helping me personally get through some traumatic times during the editing process of this video. I lost my mom to colon cancer while I was editing this, and their words really helped carry me through the process and to push through. I just can't thank you ladies enough for all you've given me personally and hopefully everyone else that's experiencing this episode. And Mom, thank you for giving me the best life any kid could want. I love you and I miss you. Until we see each other again, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll see you after the fire.